The cold comes first, settling slowly into the body until it feels inseparable from it, seeping into fingers, breath, and the quiet space behind the eyes, while the forest stands motionless around him, heavy with snow, every branch bowed under its weight. Simo Häyhä lies low against the ground, his body pressed into the white, the snow beneath him carefully packed down with quiet precision, every movement that brought him here deliberate and controlled. He breathes through his nose, slow and steady, keeping the air from forming any visible cloud, each inhale measured, each exhale softened, reducing even the smallest trace of his presence. The rifle rests in front of him, simple and unadorned, no scope, only iron sights aligned with care, held in gloved hands that remain steady without tension, familiar through years of use. A faint sound moves through the trees. He hears it immediately. A slight disturbance, out of place in the natural rhythm of the forest. His eyes shift just enough to follow it, scanning the open stretch ahead, where white blends into shadow and shadow dissolves back into white, nothing clearly visible, and yet something present. His body tightens slightly, not fear, but awareness, a readiness shaped long before this moment, before the uniform, before the rifle aimed at another man. There was a different life, quieter and more predictable, built on routine and patience. That life still exists within him. He feels it in the way he waits, in the calm that holds him in place, without discomfort, without urgency, allowing time to stretch without pressure. Hunting taught him this. Long hours of stillness, careful observation, the understanding that survival often belongs to the one who can disappear completely into the world around them. But this is not the same. The forest feels different now. The land is unchanged, yet something unseen has shifted. A quiet tension pressing into the air, altering its meaning. Another sound reaches him, clearer and closer. His finger adjusts slightly along the rifle, not tightening, not yet, but settling into position. He feels a flicker beneath the calm. Not panic, not fear, but awareness. This moment cannot be undone. Once broken, the silence will not return in the same way. He swallows, small and controlled, then lowers his cheek gently against the stock of the rifle, his eye aligning with the iron sights as the world narrows into a single line. The cold presses deeper, no longer external, absorbed into the body, accepted without resistance. A light wind moves through the trees, shifting loose snow from the branches above, letting it fall in soft drifts that briefly disturb the stillness before settling again. He remains unchanged within it. He feels no separation from the landscape, the stillness and patience embedded in him as much as they exist around him. Years of quiet work, of hunting and moving through this terrain have shaped him into something that belongs here. Yet something new has entered this space. War has arrived, not with noise but with presence, turning familiar ground into something uncertain. The sound comes again, closer now, no longer blending into the forest. He stills completely, every part of him aligned toward the unseen. His breathing remains steady. His hands do not move. The rifle does not waver. He waits. The silence stretches, heavy and unbroken, the forest holding itself in place. Nothing appears. No figure steps into view. No movement breaks the line ahead. Still, he waits. He feels the weight of the moment suspended between what has been and what is about to begin, where the cold, the silence, and the unseen come together around him. And in that stillness he remains, hidden in the snow, on the edge of something that will change everything. Winter war has begun, and the forests of Finland no longer belong only to the wind and the snow. Simo Häyhä hears the artillery long before he sees its effect, each distant impact carrying across the ground in slow waves that seem to settle into the body rather than pass through it, a constant reminder that something vast and unstoppable is moving closer. The reports that follow are clear enough without needing detail, describing an advancing force too large to fully grasp, columns of Soviet soldiers pushing forward in overwhelming numbers, supported by tanks that grind through the snow with a weight that the land itself seems to resist. Against that scale, Finland appears fragile, outmatched, almost temporary. And yet, there is no sense of collapse. Häyhä moves with quiet purpose, skis cutting clean lines through the snow as he travels deeper into terrain that is no longer defined by routine but by risk. His breathing steady, despite the cold air that burns with each inhale, his focus narrowing not out of fear but out of familiarity. He knows this land in a way the approaching army never can, reading the shape of the ground, the spacing of the trees, the subtle shifts in light and shadow that suggest where a man can move unseen and where he cannot, understanding not just where to go, but how to exist within it without leaving a trace. As the sound of the war grows louder, it begins to take on texture, individual rifle cracks breaking through the deeper rhythm of artillery, explosions sending snow into the air in sudden bursts that hang briefly before settling back into the landscape, voices carrying between the trees in sharp fragments of command and confusion. Häyhä does not add to the noise. He moves away from it, not retreating, but refining his position, searching for a place where distance and concealment combine, where the chaos of the battlefield can be reduced to something manageable, something precise. When he stops, the transition is seamless, his body lowering into the snow with the same control that guided him forward, his presence fading into the landscape as though it had always been there. From this position, the enemy begins to take shape. They appear first as movement, then as figures, dark against the white, advancing with force but without subtlety, their steps heavy, their presence loud in ways they do not seem to recognize. They move through the forest rather than with it, breaking its rhythm, disturbing its balance, carrying the noise of war into a place that has always demanded silence. Häyhä observes without urgency, his breathing slowing again as the rifle settles into place before him, the iron sights aligned carefully, deliberately, without the need for adjustment or hesitation. The scale of the conflict does not overwhelm him. Instead, it reduces. Everything beyond his immediate focus fades, the vastness of the invading force narrowing into a single line of sight, a single moment that holds meaning, while the rest becomes distant and undefined. A soldier steps forward into a clearer space between the trees, unaware of how visible he has become, his movement natural to him, but disruptive to the environment around him. Häyhä follows the motion with quiet precision, feeling the familiar alignment of breath, posture, and intent. The same principles that guided him through years of hunting now applied to something far more final. He feels the weight of the moment, not as pressure, but as clarity, the understanding that this action, once taken, cannot be reversed, that the silence he has inhabited will be broken in a way that changes its meaning entirely. The shot comes as a continuation of that stillness, rather than a disruption, sharp and controlled, carrying through the forest with a precision that contrasts against the scattered noise of the wider battle. The effect is immediate. The soldier falls, and the movement of the others shifts abruptly, confusion rippling through their formation as they search for a source they cannot identify, their attention turning outward, scanning trees and shadows that reveal nothing. Häyhä remains where he is, already still again, already absorbed back into the landscape, his presence concealed not by distance but by understanding. Around him, the war continues to expand, The noise building, the force advancing, the imbalance of numbers becoming more apparent with each passing moment. But within his position, that imbalance loses its meaning. He does not need to match their scale. He does not need to confront their strength directly. What he has instead is time, patience, and a way of moving through this environment that turns it into something more than terrain. It becomes an advantage. The fear does not arrive all at once. It builds slowly, almost quietly, spreading through the Soviet lines in fragments, in half-told stories and unfinished sentences, each one dismissed at first, then repeated, then believed. Simo Häyhä is never seen clearly. That is the problem. A unit moves through the forest at first light, their breath hanging in the air, their formation tight, their eyes scanning the trees with growing suspicion. They have been warned, though no one has explained exactly what they are looking for. The first shot comes without warning. One of the men drops mid-step, his body collapsing into the snow before the others fully understand what has happened. They react instantly, turning outward, rifles raised, searching for movement, for sound, for anything that gives direction. There is nothing. Only the forest, only the echo fading between the trees. Seconds stretch, then another shot. A second man falls. Now the silence changes. It is no longer empty. It feels occupied. The soldiers spread out, some dropping low, others firing into the trees, trying to force a response, trying to provoke something they can locate. But nothing answers. No return fire. No movement. Only the sense that something is watching them, measuring them, waiting for the next mistake. Häyhä remains where he is. He feels the rhythm of their movement breaking apart, their focus shifting from the mission to survival, their confidence dissolving into something far less controlled. He does not need to move. The forest is doing the work for him. Another soldier hesitates, stepping into a space he should cross quickly, his attention pulled in too many directions at once. The shot finds him. Again, the reaction comes too late. Again, there is nothing to see. The pattern becomes impossible to ignore. They are not being attacked in the way they understand. There is no sustained fire, no visible enemy, only single moments, perfectly timed, each one removing a man and leaving behind a space that cannot be explained. The fear deepens. It changes the way they move. Steps become slower. Voices drop lower. Even breathing feels too loud. The forest presses in around them. No longer neutral. No longer something they pass through, but something that seems to contain the threat itself. One of them whispers it first, not as a statement, as a question. The White Death. The name spreads quickly, not because it is confirmed, but because it fits the feeling, because it gives shape to something that has none. They begin to see it everywhere, in every shadow, in every gap between trees, in every stretch of open ground that suddenly feels too exposed. Häyhä feels none of this. He feels the cold, the steady weight of the rifle, the calm that returns between each moment of action. He does not think of himself as anything other than a man doing what is required, but the effect is something else entirely. He no longer needs to act constantly. The idea of him is enough. The possibility of his presence begins to shape their decisions, their movements, their sense of control, and that is where the balance shifts. Not in numbers, not in force, but in perception. They are no longer moving freely through the forest. They are reacting to it. And within that shift, Häyhä becomes something more than a soldier positioned in the snow. He becomes part of the environment itself, unseen, unfixed, present without appearing. The shots may come from one place, or another, or nowhere at all, and as the unit finally pulls back, carrying their wounded, their formation broken, their confidence shaken, They do so with a certainty that stays with them long after they leave the trees. They were not alone in there, and whatever was with them is still there now. The decision is made far from the forest, in places where the cold cannot be felt and the silence does not exist, where maps replace terrain and losses are reduced to numbers that can be studied and corrected. Simo Häyhä becomes one of those numbers at first, then something more. Reports arrive from different sectors carrying the same pattern, the same absence of explanation, the same steady reduction of men in areas that should be secure. The conclusion forms slowly but firmly. This is not chance. This is one man, and he can be stopped. The response is immediate. Not larger forces, but sharper ones. Counter-snipers are deployed in coordinated positions, not moving forward but settling into the land with patience, watching likely routes, anticipating angles, building a net that tightens without revealing itself. For the first time, the forest is watching back. Häyhä feels it, not as a clear sign, but as a change in rhythm, a subtle resistance in the environment, moments that feel closed instead of open, spaces that no longer invite movement but hold it in place. He slows. He studies. A wide stretch of ground lies ahead, broken by shallow rises and scattered trees, a place that would normally offer multiple paths through. Now it feels different. He remains still longer than usual, letting time pass, allowing the space to settle, waiting for something to reveal itself. Nothing does, and that is what confirms it. He is not alone in his way of thinking anymore. He shifts direction, circling wider, moving along a route that offers less advantage but more uncertainty, trading position for unpredictability, refusing the shape that has been set for him. Hours pass. The light begins to fade, and then finally a mistake appears. Not from him, from them. A slight adjustment in position, almost invisible. A figure settling more comfortably against the cold, creating the smallest disruption in the line of the snow. It is enough. The shot comes quickly, cleanly, the kind that ends the moment before it can develop further. The reaction is immediate. This time the response is controlled. No panic, no scattered fire. Instead, the forest answers with precision. A shot returns from another angle, closer, too close. Häyhä moves instantly, not rushing but committing, breaking from his position and cutting across the ground at an angle that removes him from the line they expect, snow kicking beneath him as he shifts into motion for the first time in hours. Another shot follows, then another. They are closing the space. He feels it now, clearly. This is no longer about presence or fear. This is pursuit. He drops low again, sliding into a new position behind a shallow rise, the ground uneven enough to break his outline, the distance just enough to create uncertainty. The forest holds still. Both sides wait. The air tightens, filled with a quiet that carries intention rather than calm. He studies the space ahead, tracing the possible lines, imagining where they would place themselves, how they would think, how they would close the gap. Then he shifts again, slower this time, moving along the edge of the rise, changing the angle just enough to create a new perspective. A figure appears, careful, patient, watching the place he had been, not the place he is now. Häyhä does not hesitate. The shot lands, the figure collapses, the silence breaks again, but only briefly. The others pull back, not in panic, in calculation. They have lost the advantage for now. The space opens again. The pressure eases but does not disappear. Häyhä remains still, feeling the weight of what has changed. This is no longer one-sided. The forest is no longer entirely his. There are others here who understand it, who can wait, who can think in the same slow, deliberate way. And yet, they are still reacting. still following, still trying to define something that refuses to stay in one place. He rises only when the moment allows it, moving away from the area without urgency, leaving behind no clear path, no pattern that can be traced forward. The hunt continues, but it is not equal, because while they search for him, he is already somewhere else. The moment does not feel important when it begins. There is no signal, no shift in the air, no sense that anything is about to end. The forest holds its usual stillness, the same cold pressing into the ground, the same long shadows stretching across the snow as the light fades toward evening. Simo Häyhä is in position again, settled into the land with the same quiet control that has carried him through every encounter, his focus narrowed, his breathing steady, his attention fixed on the space ahead. He feels the tension that has been building over days, the pressure, the awareness that the hunt has tightened, that the men searching for him are closer now, thinking more carefully, waiting more patiently. This time it does not feel distant, it feels near. A figure appears briefly between the trees, then disappears again, too controlled to be careless, too deliberate to be ignored. Häyhä does not react immediately. He studies the movement, the timing, the hesitation that follows. This is different, not a patrol, not a mistake, a trap. He adjusts his position slightly, not retreating but refining, lowering himself further, aligning his view with a narrow opening where the ground dips and rises again. Time stretches, nothing moves. Then, a flash, not a sound first, light, a sharp, sudden flicker from the distance, gone almost instantly. He understands it at the same moment it happens. The shot arrives before the thought finishes. It hits with a force that feels unreal, tearing through his face, breaking the stillness in a way nothing else has, the impact throwing him back into the snow as the world fractures into noise and absence. The forest disappears. Sound collapses into a dull, distant echo. The cold vanishes. There is no pain at first, only disruption, only the sense that something fundamental has been broken. His body does not respond the way it should. The rifle slips from his hands. The line of sight is gone. Everything narrows, not into focus but into darkness. Somewhere beyond him, movement returns. Voices, closer now. The men who have been searching for him move forward, cautious at first, then faster, drawn toward the place where the unseen has finally revealed itself. But he is no longer part of that moment. He does not hear them clearly. He does not see them. The forest, the war, the long days of waiting and watching, all of it fades into something distant, something unreachable. Time breaks apart. Minutes pass, or hours. It no longer matters. When he wakes, it is not to victory, not to recognition, but to silence. The war has ended. The date means nothing to him at first. The words slow to take shape as he returns to awareness, his body heavy, his face bandaged. The world reduced to fragments of sound and light that take time to settle into meaning. He has survived. That much becomes clear. The rest comes later. The scale of what happened, the numbers, the stories that have already begun to spread, shaping him into something larger than the man who lay in the snow. But none of that exists here. Not yet. He feels the weight of his own breath again, slower now, heavier, grounded in something real and present. No rifle, no movement to track, no space to control, only stillness. The same stillness that existed before the war, before the name, before everything changed. And in that stillness, something returns. Not the man they imagined, not the figure they feared, just the same presence that lay in the snow at the beginning. Quiet, patient, unseen. The forest is far away now, but it remains with him, not as a place, but as a memory of how he existed within it, how he became part of something larger without ever needing to define it.